Hello, we are doing a live today. I'm going to be talking to my good friend Isabel about doing deployments with kids that you are taking care of at home. So we're going to try to get her on here. I'm excited she's coming.
Oh,
Hey, how are you?
good. How are you?
Good. I'm so proud of you for making it work.
I'm doing my best. I apologize in advance if you hear baby noises. I have my son with me. So,
Yeah,
you know.
well, it's okay. You're doing real life,
Yes.
which is amazing. She's doing this for me because she's a really good friend. She's doing this for me even while nursing a baby. Um, I just wanted to tell our listeners a little bit about Isabel first. Isabel and I met when we were stationed at Laughlin Air Force Base together.
Mm-hmm.
Isabel was stationed there herself while her husband was at Moody. And when I knew Isabel, she was only pregnant. And now she has 3 kids, and she has done 3 deployments with kids. Her husband, Stephen, has been deployed 3 times, and he just came back a few months ago. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to ask Isabel, is because I know that her information is current, and she has literally just crawled out of the trenches of doing yet another deployment. And I believe you were pregnant 2 of those 3 deployments. Is that correct, Isabel?
That's correct. So I was pregnant for the first deployment with our second child and for the third deployment with our third child.
Great. Yeah. So, and she has 3 kids now, but she had 2 during her last deployment and was very pregnant with her third.
Yes.
So, I've been posting this week about just how do you cope with a deployment of your spouse while you also have kids. And I've been providing some ideas, but I've also been trying to just encourage grace for yourself and lowering your expectations. So Isabel and I are going to talk a little bit more about that. So Isabel, first question is, what is one way you helped your kids stay connected to their dad during deployment?
Okay, so for us, the kids were pretty little. So for the first deployment, my daughter was not even 2. Sorry, was not even 3 yet. She was still 2. And then for the second deployment, she was not even 3. So yes, she turned 3 and my son turned 1 right after he got back from his second deployment. And then for the last deployment, they turned 6 and 4, like days after he left. So that one was a little bit different because they were more aware that dad was gone. They were aware of the time, how much time it had been since dad left. Whereas the first couple was like, dad's not here, but I don't really know how long a week is. So it doesn't really matter. Obviously they missed dad still, but they had no concept of how long 6 months was. So with the first couple, especially, FaceTime was not a thing. They didn't get it. They didn't care. They were too busy running around the house to sit down and talk to dad. And even on this last one, I would say they FaceTimed him more and enjoyed that more. But the things that we could do to keep it simple and keep it where we could fit it in around our lives rather than stopping our lives to try to talk with dad seemed to work better, especially for the kids. So a couple examples of that would be my husband, Stephen, recording stories that he read in advance that we could watch whenever they wanted to sit down and see dad. So it wasn't him reading live, but it was still getting to see dad reading to them.
That's great. And then he's not having to worry about working that in with mission planning and doing a mission and coming down from, a mission.
Yes. Another example of that, we have a book called Kellen and the Moon or something like that. And the sentiment of it is we all look at the same moon. So before dad left, we drew moons and painted them with glow in the dark paint.
That's great.
So at night, when the kids were going to bed, they could see their moon that's glowing after the lights go out. and think about dad, and that, dad sees the same moon.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. What a
Um,
great idea.
so those are, they're fairly simple things. They're not like
Uh-huh.
life changing, but I think it helped the kids kind of stay connected to dad
Yeah, and
doing the
did you
simple
guys
things
use
like that.
like Marco Polo or anything for any of this video, or was it mostly
We
before?
we didn't really. So even more old school than just
Oh,
pre-recording. They had a room where Stephen was deployed, where dads could go sit in a chair, pick a book, and record a video onto a flash
right.
drive
I remember
that
that.
they could then
Yeah.
mail,
Yeah.
like old school
Yeah.
mail, home. And so
Okay.
that was kind of more how
How you
we
did
ended up
it.
getting.
Yeah, that's great.
Hmm.
Yeah, they used to do that too. We used to call that like the MWR 10, stuff like that
Yes.
to help when you're
Yep.
deployed. Great.
And
Well,
to
thanks for
just,
those ideas too. And I really like the not having to get the kids to settle down and focus and, be having a good day. Because, I mean, let's just be realistic. When your spouse is deployed, you have a lot of days where people are, the kids are just throwing tantrums and it's not a good
mhm,
day.
yeah.
So scheduling out the communication when they are having a good moment is a really good idea. All right, so my next question is, there's a lot of pressure on the spouse who stays at home.
Hmm.
You are juggling all the things. And I like to say, just trying to keep your kids alive.
Hmm.
I think that is a good goal, and to keep yourself alive
Yes.
during deployment. But how do you show yourself some grace and keep your expectations for yourself realistic when your spouse is deployed?
Okay, so for me, relying on Jesus is really important. Then I'm not doing it alone.
Hmm.
Um, Even though I may physically be alone, that strength is really key, um, especially on days when I am not feeling strong. To
Right.
have Jesus be my strength when I'm weak is really important.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but also planning in advance, planning activities in advance that the kids and I could look forward to while dad was gone is helpful.
Hmm.
And also just uh, expecting to survive more than thrive while dad is gone.
I
One
love
example of
that. I love that. Because I mean that we need to lower our expectations, right? We don't have to thrive when they're deployed.
yeah. So
We can
my
just survive during that time.
yes, and it really, I mean, even so, something as simple as on our, I think it was the first deployment, I was feeding our daughter. So she was almost 2. I was pregnant, and I just wanted mealtime to be over every time we sat down to eat. I just wanted her to eat and be done. So, could she feed herself? Sure. She was probably capable of feeding herself.
Hmm.
Was it way faster if I fed her? Yes, it was way faster. And so, in the interest of having other time to do other things, I was feeding her.
Hmm.
When Stephen got home from his deployment, he was like, "Why is our 2-year-old being fed?" It's like, because you weren't here and I needed the extra hour and a half every day that I was getting by feeding her instead of waiting for her to figure it out herself.
Right.
And so we learned from that too, that when he gets home, he will have ideas about how I can change things and how we can do things better now that we're both able to parent together.
Right.
And it is helpful if he is gentle in his suggestions and his
Yeah.
corrections of what I was doing in order to survive
Right.
while
Yes.
it was just me.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's, kind of a trivial
Yeah.
example,
No,
but
no, it's good.
that
Yeah.
was, us surviving. It wasn't thriving.
Right.
Should my 2-year-old know how to feed herself? Yeah, she should. But in the moment,
Yeah.
what worked for us was me feeding her.
Well, and I love that you're lowering your expectations for perfection,
Mhm.
right? Which I think all women struggle with. I know I did too, right? But just to say, like, you know what? I'm not doing all the things right, but that's okay. I'm keeping everybody alive, and she is getting fed,
Right.
I had another friend who gave a great idea that I just wanted to plug in here because I think it's really appropriate. She said that when her husband came home from deployment, one of the things that they did was 3 days of observation. So the spouse just observed her interact with the kids
Mm-hmm.
for 3 days because, kids are constantly changing and adjusting and they're going through all the phases. And so they've been gone for a few months. Things have changed,
Yes.
right? So they're going to observe and not try to jump in too much, um, just to kind of figure out how do I reintegrate, but we
Mm-hmm.
also have to let them
Yes.
reintegrate.
Yes.
And they are going to have some good ideas. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many things that I feel like my husband has given me wisdom on because like I'm so deep in the trenches that I can't see.
Right.
But yeah, I
Absolutely.
love that you were like, hey, I need you to say thank you so much for keeping our daughter alive. But have you considered,
Yes.
yeah. So that's great. Thanks for, just I really appreciate you being honest and saying like
Yeah.
it's okay to not be perfect. Because I think that's what people need to hear. So, all right, final question. What things did you do to help ease some of the burden on yourself? Which I'm going to say honestly, just keep yourself sane.
Yes. Yes. So, two things. Both of them I think are hard for most military spouses because we have to be independent. Um, Learning to say no and accepting help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I probably did not do that well until this third deployment. Um, and I think part of being able to say no and accept help is having a community. So it is harder when you have just moved and your spouse deploys and you don't really have that community established yet because you don't have the same help to lean on. You don't have the relationships established to say, hey, I know you. I know our kids like each other. Could you take my kids for a few hours so that I can take a nap? Or so
Right.
I can go grocery shopping without three people asking me, Mom, can I have this? What about that? Let's put this in the
Yeah.
cart.
Well, which when your spouse is deployed, that's like a luxury. It's like a spa treatment.
Yes. So the learning to say no,
Mm-hmm.
maybe backing away from some of the responsibilities you would normally take.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this last deployment, I was previously a key spouse, and I asked our commander, while Stephen is gone, could I step back? And I'm still
So
happy
good.
to provide thoughts. And if people need help with something specific, I'm happy to do that. But if I cannot be the go to while he's gone, I think that would take a lot of pressure off of me. So just, again, managing expectations
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that can't do everything. And especially when your energy is not unlimited,
Mm-hmm.
conserving that for the things that are important and things that are going to keep your kids alive
Well,
instead of things
and
that
going to
are
keep you sane
additional.
too, right?
Right.
I think that's really hard for us. I had to do this. Brian used to fly night missions, which
Hmm.
basically meant I was doing the parenting solo, at least Monday through
Right.
Friday. Yeah, and I found I was really stressed out all the time.
Hmm.
Um, and I just realized I had to take things off my plate to give myself more capacity for patience and understanding with my two small children and my husband. I was still seeing him on Saturdays, but it's not real great when you show up angry when you haven't seen
Right.
your husband,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I had to
Uh-huh.
figure out how to lower um, the stresses so I could keep my mental state better.
Hmm.
And yes, it does mean saying no. And I think military spouses, we have to be independent at times, right?
Hmm.
We do have to steer the ship alone often. But I think that can be a detriment to us when we're not willing to wave the surrender flag and say, hey,
Hmm.
I need some help.
Yes.
And just being willing to be realistic. So I'm super proud of you for just stepping out from key spouse, right? That doesn't mean that you maybe won't do it again or you don't feel it's a good ministry. But our priorities have to stay the Lord, our marriage, our kids, and then, work or ministry to other people. So I'm really proud of you for just recognizing that was a boundary. Boundaries are good.
Yes.
And especially
Yes.
when your spouse is deployed. I mean, I think you really have to take a look at all the things you and your kids are doing and evaluate what of these can we get rid of? I'm
Hmm.
sure they all serve a good purpose,
Right.
but
Or
during
you wouldn't be doing
deployment,
them.
right, but during deployment, I just think they have to get less,
Hmm.
to just give you more capacity for just life, right? And
Yes.
unexpected things happen all the time, right? Murphy's Law, right? Everything's
Yes.
going to break. So we
Yes.
have to build in and give ourselves some mental and physical space to deal with all those things.
Hmm.
So,
Another
all
thing
right.
I forgot to
Yeah.
mention that helped a lot was I would make plans in advance, but I would never tell the kids about the plans until we were on our way to them,
Yeah.
so that if plans didn't pan out, they weren't upset about it. And that saved a lot of
Right.
heartache and just helped with expectation management, so that the kids weren't looking forward to going to the trampoline park and then something comes up, we can't go, and they're brokenhearted. I would just wait until we were in the car
Yeah.
on the way to the trampoline park and then tell them, guess what we're doing? This is going to be so fun.
Yeah.
And so that kind of still, we had fun things we could look forward to that were exciting without people getting upset when
Yeah.
it didn't work out.
No, I love that. And I love, like, it also probably helped manage your own expectations for yourself. Because, like, if I've told my kids we're going to do ABC, let's say
Hmm.
the trampoline park, right? But they're having a terrible day and melting down. I don't need to
It's
go.
not a day for the
I
trampoline
don't need
park.
to go to the trampoline park, right?
That's
But if
right.
I've already told them, I'm going to be like, oh, I don't want to disappoint them. But you know
Hmm.
what disappoints them more? And I'm just going to speak for myself. What disappoints them more is when I completely lose it and yell at them because I've taken them to the trampoline park when we shouldn't have gone to the trampoline park.
Right. Yes.
That disappoints them far more than
Yes.
just not
Not
telling them. So,
right. Not knowing they
Isabel, you
missed
have
it.
such great wisdom.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, thanks
It's
so
just
much
lived
for,
experience.
yeah, thanks so much for coming on and doing this with me.
Yeah,
I
no
feel
problem.
like it's blessed several people, and I'll post it to my account and people can go back and watch it later. Thanks so much, Isabel. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it. Thanks
happy to
for
do
those
it.
of you that tuned in. Y'all have a blessed day.
You too. Bye.